Do the trashy pulp novels of the world have anything to offer? Are bestsellers all they're cracked up to be? Here at Terrible Book Club, we explore whether you really can judge a book by its cover, or its ridiculous synopsis. You ever passed a book and thought, ugh, who's reading this? We probably are.
Hello and welcome to episode 123 of the Terrible Book Club. I'm Paris and this is Chris.
Hello.
This time we read The Claiming of Sleeping Beauty by Anne Rice under the pseudonym A.N. Roquelaure. This was initially published in 1983 by an imprint of Penguin Random House. TBC listener Anne reached out to us on Twitter earlier this year about this series, and we thought a dark take on a common fairy tale might be good for this spooky time of year. Wait, Anne. Fuck, it was Anne Rice just trying to get more airtime, wasn't it? God
damn it.
Fucking damn it, Anne Rice.
Hoodwinked again.
Anne Rice, you had the whole of the 90s, some of the early 2000s even. You know what? Out you go. Out.
Don't do this.
And I know you like to be ordered around, so get out.
Yeah. Turns out.
All right. If this is your first time listening to the Terrible Book Club, what we do on this show is we read books that we assume will be bad based on their cover, title, summary, or some combination of the three. Sometimes, like today, we read books that our listeners, patrons, or friends recommend. So we typically do the opposite of what most people do when they're browsing and looking for something to read in a bookstore or on the internet. And most of the time, this experiment results in a hilariously disappointing read, although, once in a while, we do end up liking the book. Whoa, big content warnings today. Okay, these content warnings are coming with
flashing sirens.
Sirens.
As an audio editing, I am putting the loudest fucking sounds I can here just to make sure your attention is here. Because boy.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say that if all right, Chris, drop the papers. Okay, all right. Consent forms. Okay. All right, okay. Read the consent form, and when you're ready, you can go ahead and sign. If you're not...
Yeah, we're asking you to consent first, turns out.
If you're not...
Which is a nice thing to do.
Very important thing. If you're not interested in hearing about the following topics, don't listen to the rest of this episode. Please find one of the other 122 episodes available.
It's fine if you skip this one.
All right. Today's content warnings are BDSM, so that's bondage, dominance, sadomasochism, enslavement, rape, sexual torture, and pedophilia / ephebophilia. So if you don't want to talk about those, if you don't want to hear about that stuff, don't listen to this fucking episode. I'm going to say it again.
Run away. Fast. Immediately. Slam that stop button right now. Close the app.
Yeah,
delete the episode.
It's not possible to discuss this book without talking about all of those topics in unfortunately graphic detail. So again, if this is not your jam, turn away. All right. You've been warned. You've signed the consent forms. I have your consent in blood. So let's get this going. All right, Chris, you want to read the back of the book summary here?
Yes. From best-selling author Anne Rice, writing as A.N. Roquelaure. In the traditional folktale of Sleeping Beauty, the spell cast upon the lovely young princess and everyone in her castle can only be broken by the kiss of a prince. It is an ancient story, one that originally emerged from and still deeply disturbs the mind's unconscious. Now, Anne Rice's retelling of the beauty story probes the unspoken implications of this lush, suggestive tale by exploring its undeniable connection to sexual desire. Here, the prince reawakens beauty not with a kiss, but with sexual initiation.
That's a nice way to put that.
His reward for ending the 100 years of enchantment is beauty's complete and total enslavement to him. as Anne Rice explores the world of erotic yearning and fantasy in a classic that becomes, with her skillful pen, a compelling experience.
All right.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, all right. So that's what is advertised on the tin. Our characters and setting. So our characters are, of course, Beauty of the titular Sleeping Beauty. We have Prince, Queen, Alexei, and then various lords and ladies, such as Lord Gerald, Lady Juliana, etc. The setting is just a nondescript medieval fantasy world, so whatever you think that is. I'm gonna read the summary. Chris, do you want to read the summary, actually? Because I'm gonna say a thing after the summary.
Okay. So there's this prince, and he makes his way to the castle of Beauty, which has fallen under a sleep spell. He rapes her, which awakens her and the rest of the castle for some reason, and immediately claims her as his, forbidding her from wearing clothing and informing her parents, his vassals, that she is being taken to his castle as part of some arrangement all lords have with the prince's family. Beauty is taken on a journey to the castle completely naked the whole time and initiated into the prince's megadom BDSM lifestyle, in which he treats her as his property and allows others to use her as he sees fit. When they arrive at the castle, Beauty finds that there are many princes and princesses who are under this system, and the whole castle seems to be built around spanking and BDSM activities. Beauty is humiliated, spanked, assaulted, while also being cleaned and oiled from time to time. She is introduced to other members of the court in various stations within the castle, most notably Prince Alexei, another boy toy who takes a liking to her, and she to him. Beauty is made to run along the bridle path, the Bridle, a soft gravel road on the grounds of the castle, while wearing horse-esque leather clothing and accessories and being constantly spanked by nobility on horseback. She was also made to service the queen herself, who seems to be in charge of this whole business. The evening after this, Prince Alexei visits her in secret. They fuck. Alexei has his own horribly traumatic tale of how he came to be at the castle, although at this point he has grown to somehow enjoy his predicament. The next morning, Beauty attempts to run away, is immediately captured, and is sent to the village, where the non-nobility can have their way with her, presumably. To be continued?
Yeah, this is book 1 in a 4-book series. All right, so before we get too far into the episode and before we talk about things we liked and didn't like about the book, I just want to say 2 things. The first is that if the foreword of this book literally just had a few lines that said something like, hey, this is a BDSM fantasy involving age play, pony play, and enslavement, but please know that the actual kink community utilizes consent and rules, and there is no actual rape, enslavement, or pedophilia happening, we would have had a lot less of an issue with the whole kit and caboodle.
Mm-hmm. Forward here really does a disservice to the whole book here.
Yeah.
Anne Rice is firmly up her own butthole.
Yeah, so instead the forward is used by the author to sort of grandstand and kind of push back against people who yucked her yums. And I just really think she needed a more, instead of spending 15 pages or whatever talking about how feminist and great she is, it just would have been nice for her to say, hey, in the actual kink community, like, this is how, consent is a thing. This isn't what this is all supposed to be, like I said, no one's actually 15. It's age play. No one's, it's pony play or whatever, But there's no guardrails put on it. So so that's kind of the issue, the main issue we have. And secondly, this review is going to be from the perspective of 2 people, Chris and I, who are outside of the kink community, who are critiquing this as a piece of literature in the larger media and cultural landscape, because this isn't just a book that, it's just nestled away in kink land. It's not just like a blog somewhere that, you only have a special URL to see if you're into this kind of thing. It was something that was sort of published in, in 83, this imprint of Random House. It was kind of a lesser imprint. Most people didn't even know it was Anne Rice. It was just kind of floated under the waves. And then it suddenly resurged, surged to popularity in the wake of 50 Shades of Grey and blah, blah, blah. And it was republished a few times later on. So anyway, like Chris and I want to talk about these concepts being in kind of constants in literature and media at large. So if you're like, it's not for sure, but it's very likely that you are not going to enjoy this episode if you are into some of the themes in this book, because we are going to yuck some yums because we feel the yums are not being prepared responsibly. And also because we feel that those yums are tied to larger things in our sociocultural landscape that are problematic in real life. And even though in the beginning of the book, Anne tries to tell us, it's just fantasy, just forget about everything else. It's Chris and I have problems with trying to carve a really like tough line there between fantasy and reality, because your fantasies are derived from reality, and a lot of the fantasies that we are served then come back to haunt us in reality.
Yes.
So
that's what if you're into BDSM or dom play or anything like this, where assumedly you're gaining people's consent, and it is a very sort of, I don't want to say structured, but, everyone is on the up and up and understands the boundaries and follows those boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is fine. I have zero issues with any of that.
Yeah, and I
it's
think
not how it's presented here.
Right, and I think that's the thing where we're trying to get at is like we're not trying to kink shame or anything. But when this is just released out into the world and people are finding it, like, did they, I don't know. I did do a little bit of a cursory kind of Googling to see what reviews said about this. And I do feel like there are people within the kink community who are like, oh, well, it's obviously fantasy because it's in a fantasy world. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, a lot of things are written in a fantasy world, and I don't know that always clues readers into what's really going on here. I mean, if you're anyway.
Or even what is responsible to behave like in the real world. There's nothing here that says like, hey, you shouldn't actually enslave people and say that you can never wear clothes again for the rest of your service to me here. That there's a line here. Also, I guess this is a point I can make now because it really encapsulates my whole yucking of this whole thing. When you're making it a point to tell me every other page, or minimally every third page, how your main character, Beauty, is in tears, crying for most of this book, I can't get on board with that.
Yeah, and I get that, that's what some people are into, but again, it's like couched in a greater setting of enjoyment, right? Which we're not getting.
Yes.
Which is why it's hard for us. So again, sorry for anyone who is I don't know, upset that we're not into this or whatever, but I think that we do have to critique this from a slightly different angle, because I don't know, we're like, neither of us are into it. And book reviews are our opinions and our experience of a book.
Oh yeah,
so,
let's not litigate this fucking like book reviews have to be objective shit. No, art reviews are subjective. There's no such thing as an objective art review.
Can you imagine?
Stop it.
The painting was 12 inches by 18 inches. It included the colors
it was blue,
teal, ochre, red, and black. It was painted in 17 hours, and it had the following shapes in these areas of the painting. And it was in this style. That's my review of the painting. Yeah, that wouldn't.
This song was 3 minutes and 29 seconds long. There were 2 guitars. One of them had a delay effect on it.
Yeah.
The singer said the following words. Like, that's not what the fucking reviews are. Stop complaining at us because we're not objective. That's not what this is. That's not what any media review is.
Yeah, and secondly, I also just want to emphasize that, we're not always going to be right about everything in reviews, and we know that. We're giving you our impressions of a book, sometimes right after we've read it, sometimes after we've stewed for, a week or so. But it's our impressions. We have thought about them a little bit. We do give thought to what we say in our reviews, but we're not perfect, and we're going to make mistakes and be wrong sometimes. Not everyone's going to agree with the way that we feel about things, and we know that. So
That's
anyway,
cool. That's fine.
There's a lot of
You're
preamble.
allowed to have a different...
lot of preamble here, but I really just want to make sure we are being clear before we launch into this. So, I things that were good. I have zero things for me.
None.
Things.
This was one of the worst things that I've ever had to read, Paris. I was thoroughly disgusted the whole time because of the tears. Again, it's not the dom and sub stuff that disgusts me. That is fine. I can even get down with a little bit of light versions of that sometimes. It's the tears. It's really the tears that I don't like. I cannot stand.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't really come up with anything I liked about this.
I suppose you can give your usual, like, technically it's fine.
You know what? I don't think there were any typos. I think there might have been one, because I usually keep some track. I keep loose track. I think there was maybe one or two, so no typos. I mean, the sentences were, understandable, easy to follow, written in conventional English. They flowed okay. I mean, a lot of the... that might be the only good thing I have to say. I was really straining because it's tough when you're reviewing a book that ends up just being 100% not for you. It's really hard.
1,000,000% all the way not for me.
Yeah. So I'm really sorry, but we got to go right into things that were not good. I don't know that there's...
Yes, I can't bring anything up.
You know what? Okay, so the first thing that wasn't good, but that has like an ounce of goodness in it, is actually the foreword. So in 2012, a foreword by Anne Rice was tacked onto the book. So this foreword didn't exist from 1983 to 2012, and then it was added. And the foreword, like we said earlier, could have been good if it was just very explicit about, like, hey, if you're doing this for real in the kink community, like, just so you know, there is consent, blah, 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 blah. But like, we already touched on this, but instead Anne just goes on this rant about, like, how dare you criticize me for, I'm glad to write porn. Writing porn is feminist, and women should be able to write porn and enjoy porn. And, like, fine, I'm not fighting with you about that, Anne.
True.
I'm not fighting with you about that. That's fine.
That's not the issue.
No, that's fine.
Not the issue that people have, I think.
No, and I think I don't know if she just misunderstood why people were upset or about the book or what the pushback was, right? I don't know. But she seems to be kind of on her high horse about freedom of speech and whatever. And you know what? And I agree with you. I think people, should be able to write things. But with freedom comes responsibility. And
I'm not saying that this should have, like, she shouldn't have the right to write this or publish it, perhaps. Like, yes, by all means, I suppose.
No, but it's out in the world, and so we can consider it as a thing out in the world affecting other people.
And we're allowed to critique it. Yeah.
But again, with freedom comes responsibility, I think. So of course, I'm not sitting here, like, we're not sitting here saying, oh, we're anti-sex and anti-kink or whatever. But, and, I can read some of the forward just because I think it is. Let's see. I'll just read the beginning. I've always loved the fairy tale Sleeping Beauty and found something erotic at its core. The prince awakens Beauty with a kiss. And I thought, all right, but what if he brought a kind of liberation, an induction into a world of bizarre yet irresistible delights? It has to be remembered that within the frame of a sadomasochistic fantasy like the Beauty trilogy, the readers are invited to identify with and enjoy the predicament of the slaves. The books aren't about literal cruelty, they're about surrender, the fun of imagining you have no choice but to enjoy sex. Beauty's slavery is delicious, sensuous, abandoned, and ultimately liberating. That is all part of the framework. And it seemed to work exquisitely with the old fairy tale. And of course, the fairy tale removes us from everyday life. It removes us from the intrusion of garish headlines, literal violence, and all the ugliness of crime. We go into a gilded dream here, luscious and engulfing, in which we're free to imagine all sorts of things. A fairy tale world indeed. So, it's just a few pages of this, and I honestly, when I read this, the foreword, I thought, oh, whatever, okay, it's gonna be Sleeping Beauty getting down with the prince. I don't know, whatever. Maybe they'll be, I was like, okay, I'm sure the sex will be graphic, but I don't think this really sets you up for what you're actually getting in a few pages. No.
When she's like, oh, it's a gilded fantasy away from all the garish violence and crimes. It's like, you're telling me about how she's crying all the time, Anne?
Yeah, I just think that, the expectations that she's presenting, don't really equate to the content that you get later on. She even goes on to say, like, there's no harsh or garish violence. No one is burned or cut or hurt. No one is killed. It's just game playing, really. And I think that we're going to explain why that is maybe too light of a description for what's actually happening. If you're trying to prepare people for something, you should be upfront about it. And I really think she dances around things, or she's just become so, I don't know, maybe in her own pursuit of these sort of kinky delights, she's just become so desensitized that she doesn't understand that most people would actually consider much of this to be hurtful, like actual
and
cruel and be crimes and things like that.
Yes.
She thinks this is romantic and sensuous pleasure. She uses the word gilded more than once. She also talks about being a feminist and how she's supportive of equal rights for women in all walks of life. And that includes the right of every woman to write out her sexual fantasies and to read books filled with sexual fantasies. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Anyhow, she thinks it's wonderful. So you're like, all right, whatever. I'm going to get Sleeping Beauty having sex with the prince. I was woefully underprepared by that forward. I felt very taken aback when things started happening.
It's like in 3 pages, I have never seen a book speedrun sexual assault so fast, going for the record.
Yeah.
In here, short of just writing the word rape in the first sentence there, just to put that idea in your head, which is, I suppose, like the glitch run, the exploit there. If you just write that word there, you'll get to that quicker than anyone else. But it's literally, the prince enters the castle, and then he enters Beauty.
Yeah, so this is actually true to an earlier version of the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale where the spell is actually broken because she is raped. So, that's the one part that we use in the...
So, Paris, I posited this to you when I kind of made this point to you when we were talking about this book as we read it. The Sleeping Beauty stuff here is just to have that be the impetus for everything, right? There's no other part of the Sleeping Beauty story that is in here aside from that initial assault that happens up at the top. Mm-hmm. If you removed that, it could have been any princess and prince in any kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's useful here in the plot. There is not much of a plot. This is a fetish wank porn. I mean, it's not a fairy tale, which is, I think, the other problem here is that we're invited into a fairy tale, but that's not what it is. Yeah, so I think it serves the plot because, rather than, for example, a princess who is just asleep, the rape breaks a curse over an entire kingdom that has lasted 100 years. So Beauty, is indebted to the man who rapes her, right? Socially indebted, culturally indebted. So it definitely really kicks off that enslavement real hard, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, there's a whole litany of things that we find not good about this book. Some ranging from very serious to very funny, I think. So this is going to run the gamut. My initial problem here is that the story centers around teenagers and sometimes preteens, it is suggested.
Yes.
So that touches a line that I'm not cool with. I just don't think, sex with young children. If you're in a fantasy world,
just age them up.
Just age them up. You have 2 choices. Age them up into their 20s or something, or write a very explicit forward that says, hey, this is age play. You're supposed to be thinking that you're pretending to be a child or whatever, which, I'm not into, but I can at least understand that, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I accept that people are into things that I'm not into, but can we just do it responsibly? The other reason I have a problem with this is that we live in a society that fetishizes young people, especially young women. We live in a fucking rape culture, like, do we just, God, this is already the reality. I don't like this is already
this whole book is Beauty. The 16-year-old
15.
owes her body. 50. Okay, great. So she owes her body to the dominant man.
Who is only 18 too, which is also
because he helped her out of a jam this one time. And therefore you owe him physically for years and years and years.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to say it again. I get that some people are like into this whole idea as like I don't know, they think it's hot, but can we just think about this? Like, why is this? Can we just examine why we think this is hot? Like, is it like, because to me, it feels like the dominant culture just telling you this is hot and you going, okay, I guess it is because it has to be for me. Because
yeah, we talked about this in a previous episode, right? Where it's just like people not actually examining why they find it's hot. Part of it is the vulnerability, right? And the naive nature of a younger person.
Yeah, it's just it's difficult for me because I think it's criminal to include children in sexual activity like most people feel. And
the law says.
And I am even worried about things like this, like media, where it's like, oh, it's just a story, but it's like, yeah, but you're perpetuating those ideas still. It's just really hard for me to get over. It's really hard for me to get over, again, unless there's like explicit call-outs. But again, this is just not that.
Or even if that kind of thing is like background, like, oh, I'm writing a historical fiction piece where marriage between very young people was a little bit more common. That's just kind of like the setting that I have. When it's not the centerpiece of all of the whole thing is that you're humiliating and assaulting a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah, I mean, this entire book is the sexual torture of adolescents by rich weirdos.
Yes.
Like, that's the...
Yes.
And by other adolescents. Yeah, so... And I know some people are going to be like, well, they're not children, they're teenagers. And it's like, well, I don't know, man. Again, my personal review of this book, not cool. I don't think it's good. We already live in a society where 15-year-olds are, raped and sexually exploited and have all these pressures on them about being servile and things. So it's a little tough for me to just be like, oh yeah, this fun fairy tale.
We don't need more of this.
Yeah, like this. Sorry, Anne, this isn't a fucking gilded dream when this is my waking nightmare in the world the reality I currently live in.
Yes.
There is something curious too about the presentation of the sex, the rape, the sexual assault. The word rape is only used when men are forced to have sex with other men, and it's never used in scenes involving women. And that was just something that I started noticing, and then I went, wait, that can't be right. But then I checked. I really did.
It's basically only when Prince Alexei describes his initiation and torture.
No, there's also a scene where what's her name? Beauty and the prince are having, Alexei is made to have sex with Beauty, and then the prince is fucking Alexei at the same time, and they use the word rape there. So it's only when men are having sex with other men that the word rape is used, which I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it's like a weird fucking dog whistle to rape culture where women are devalued and their experiences are considered less. And I know a lot of you are going to say, oh, Paris, you're reading too much into this fantasy porn, but I don't care. I don't like it. And we're going to talk about why I don't like it and why it matters to people. I gave enough of a preamble. I really just...
Yeah, presumably you're here for our opinions on things.
Yeah. It's well, and the thing is, it's not like I'm saying, oh, I'm just not into that. I'm saying I'm not into this because I actually think it's a real problem in actual society, and it affects me as a human being negatively. Then we also have like no character has a real personality, and it's really cartoonish. I mean,
they're all just fucking all the time. There's no room to grow for personality.
No, and Anne seems to think here that she has written this profound intellectual piece on finding, joy in enslavement and abuse, but she hasn't. Like, Beauty's inner monologue is actually, it's not very advanced. She's just kind of, even in her mind's eye, she's just sort of doe-eyed and going, oh, well, I guess I should, I don't know, I kind of like it, so I guess it's fine. It's like, dude, you woke up from a coma at the age of 15, a virgin, like, I don't know that you could consider you liking this when this is all you've known. Like, she doesn't have any fucking clue what's going on. So there really isn't this these deep thoughts. I think in the forward, Anne actually says something like this is Anne in the forward again. I also went all the way with exploring the mindset of sadomasochism as I saw it, letting the fantasy characters talk in depth about what they felt and what they enjoyed, and what thrilled them as they were humiliated and overwhelmed. I suspect that for some readers, this kind of deep exploration of the mentality of the participants was entirely new. I gotta tell you, Anne, I did not find anything deep or interesting, and in fact, if there was more of that, it at least I would have had some paragraphs of refuge if there was,
True.
Some kind
you
of...
get a little bit of that with Alexei, right? Like, he's sort of telling Beauty, like, oh, it's actually fine because you learn to kind of like it because you don't have to think about anything except pleasing these people. And that's kind of nice in a way, but that's about as far as it goes, right? Like, here's one of those scenes. Tell me, he said with authority. Well, tonight, the rose, the last little pink bud, why did I pick it up in my teeth and offer it to Lady Juliana? Why? She had been so cruel to me. You wanted to please her. She is your mistress. You are a slave. The highest thing you can do is please, so you sought to do it, and not only in response to her paddling and her commands, but in that moment of your own will. Ah, yes, said Beauty, that was it. And on the bridal path, how can I confess it, I felt some release in myself. As if I were no longer locked in struggle, I was just a slave, a poor, desperate slave who must strive purely. You are eloquent, he said with feeling. You know much already. But I don't want to feel this. I want to rebel in my heart. I want to steel myself against them. They torment me endlessly. My prince, were he the only one? But even if he were, he would find new ways to torment you, and he is not the only one. But tell me why you don't wish to give in to them. Well, surely you know. Didn't you rebel? Don't you? Why, Leon said of you there is a core in you which no one touches. Nonsense. I merely know and accept everything. There is no resistance. But how can it be? Beauty, you must learn it. You must accept and yield, and then you shall see everything is simple. I would not be here with you if I yielded, because the prince... Yes, you could be here with me. I adore my queen, and I am here with you. I love you both. I yield to that entirely, as well as everything else, and even the knowledge I may be punished. And when I am punished, I shall dread it, and suffer it, and understand it, and accept it. Beauty, when you accept you will flower in the pain, you will flower in your suffering.
And Beauty doesn't really have any deep thoughts. I just did not find it intriguing at all. It seemed very shallow to me, which also just devalued the whole thing. I mean, plenty of people can write endless scenes of spankings, which, spoiler,
yes.
That's mostly what this book is.
Beauty's inner monologue, the as far as it goes, is essentially, well, I find the prince handsome, so I probably enjoy it when he does these things to me, even though I'm in tears and humiliated all the time, and that's a little bit confusing. So it's just that sort of muddled area where she does not really doing any work about it.
No.
She's just kind of experiencing it and going like, well, I like some parts of it, but I don't like most of it.
Yeah, she basically says, oh no, my body is responding, therefore I must be into this. And oh, well, the prince is attractive, so I guess everyone's right. Like, it could be a really ugly old man, you know, who is raping me, so this is fine. And I don't know, those two ideas there, to me, even in some kind of BDSM porn, are really insidious. And like, God, again, it just, I can't stop thinking about the world that we live in where these things, you know, oh, your body reacted when you were raped, therefore you enjoyed it. Like, it is unfortunate. It does unfortunately happen that a woman may have an orgasm. She, you know, you may have excretion of fluids, you know, or whatever, during a sexual assault. And it doesn't mean that you're enjoying it or that you deserved it or that you wanted it or any of that. And the fact that that idea is nestled in here, I find extremely troubling.
Mm-hmm.
I can't find a way to excuse that, even if you are into, rape fantasies. Like, it just seems an extra layer of fucked upness that we didn't need,
As a little sidebar here, there was a line in here about her Beauty experiencing one of these, moments of getting aroused. And it talks about how she was wet enough that it kind of felt like someone had squeezed a grape within her. And Paris, I mean, let's have a little couple of minute discussion here about I feel like it's more than a grape usually, right? Like, grapes can get a little amount of fluid in there, but I feel like if I squished a grape, that would be less fluid overall than when someone is enjoying it.
Yeah,
this
is one of my notes that was actually hilarious to me that I laughed out loud about because, what a grape? Like a single grape? There's not a lot going on in a single grape.
I feel like that's like 30 seconds to 2 minutes of foreplay tops. Like, is what that is.
God, I don't know if we'd have to come up with a unit of measurement for vaginal fluid as measured by grape squishes. But yeah, it was just a silly thing to put in there. I
mean, like, come on, like at least a peach, right? At least a peach.
Well, while we're actually talking about some of our funnier notes, I have a note that says, for how much this book disgusted me, and I actually had a hard time getting through it, like, there was something especially hilarious about one of these scenes where Beauty is made to wear, like, bells they're basically, like, really painful nipple and vagina clamps with bells on them. So she's got all these fucking bells clamped on her. And she's giving this dude a blowjob, and she's thinking about how good his pubes smell in a medieval fantasy world. Yeah. I just thought that was really funny. I mean, I guess they do actually have a lot of grooming rituals and stuff mentioned in the book. But I don't know. I hate to say I laughed, but I did because it's kind of funny.
Pube smell isn't what I'm really going for all the time. Like, specifically the pubes, right? Not like the stuff that is nestled within the pubes, which is what you're probably going to be into the smell of a little bit more. It's the hair itself.
Yeah, I thought that was just an unfortunate point where I laughed really hard. I will say, like, for all the ugliness of this book, it actually ends up being boring. Which is really odd feelings to have simultaneously, because like it's basically 80% spanking, and there's
a spank at least a page, right? Like minimally you're getting a spank per page.
Yeah, and I feel like even if you are into kink stuff, like that much spanking seems boring. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Again, we're outside of this realm. Yeah. Maybe you really do want that much fucking spanking in there.
Yeah.
But even then, like, also there's like a lot of paddles in here, right, Paris? There's like a lot of paddles in the castle.
Yes.
There's a lot of them. There's I feel like it's like my house and guitar picks. Like, they're just everywhere, all over the floor, all the time, in the laundry chutes, just showing up everywhere. Who dropped their paddle in here? Why don't we get like a segment about like the royal paddle smith or like the cock statue artisan, like the guy that has to make all like the Baphomet statues with dicks coming off that you're like impaling people upon. It's like, oh great, another fucking dick statue. Great, I get it. Okay, I guess it's a steady paycheck, Miss Queen.
Man, I just fucking repaired that one. Alexi, stop. I told you, fuck one of the other cocks on the statue. I just repaired that one. Now it's broken again. Do you know how long it takes me?
It down.
And then I gotta get spanked because it's broken, even though I didn't do it, because we live in this fucking nightmare. That would have been at least funny. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, there's also, in talking about, the writing, we were just talking about how, it's a fucking lot of spanking. There's also just literally like 70 pages that could probably have been cut from this, because it's just I don't know, and I may be exaggerating. It certainly felt like 70 pages. It's this long-ass Alexi monologue where Alexi and Beauty kind of sneak away together for one night, to have regular fucking on their own, that they actually want to do together. And he, like Chris was saying earlier, he tells her how he at first was really rebellious and terrified and hated it, but then kind of had his spirit broken / was reborn through, reborn and found happiness in slavery. But it's literally just him saying, they put me in the kitchen and then I was raped on a barrel and then I was raped on another barrel and then I was raped on the barrel again and then everyone raped me in the garden, and then it's just page after page. And the thing is, I feel like it doesn't really even, mercifully, it doesn't get into much detail. So I don't really know how much wank material this is, even if you are into this, when it's just, and then he got raped again, and then he was raped on the barrel, and then he was in the garden on the barrel, and then he was in the garbage in the barrel, and then it was just, it's just real.
Right? Like, what, if you're finding anything hot about that, it's literally the assault portion of it, right?
Well, it's the humiliation part, but it doesn't really go into great detail, so I just wonder if it's really even serving the people who want this for the sexiness of it that they find. It didn't seem like it was really doing that well. There's also certain terminology that's a little old-fashioned, and I suppose that's because she's trying to keep it in fairy tale territory, so there's a lot of like buttocks and I don't know, not testicles, but
they switched to penis and balls like during Alexi's portion too, which made it feel weird to me when they were using like other terms for it before. There was a lot of manhoods and whatnot there.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden Alexi's like, and then he shaved my penis and balls.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
so
that's direct.
The terms are a little, I feel like it can be a little distracting. But I don't know, maybe that works. I don't know.
That's a minor quibble amongst all the rest of the forest of shit that we're trekking through here, so that's fine ultimately.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? Anyway, before we get into the last part, which I think is going to be more fun, because we're gonna get into like our sort of silly, funnier notes. I do want to say I worry that this book kind of being out there without an explicit statement at the beginning actually kind of smears the kink community, because if people like us pick this up, if we weren't at least, wise to the existence of the kink community and, the basics of consent, I feel like, people that are into this kind of fantasy stuff definitely get typecast as being, bad people and criminals and stuff. And unfortunately, I think because it doesn't have that explicit warning at the beginning, like it could lead people, it could, I guess, add fuel to the fire of a negative stereotype that is not correct. People in the kink community are mostly fine. Like they're just...
Yeah, I have a couple of friends that engage in that area sometimes, and the explicit and enthusiastic consent aspect of it is a huge aspect of it. It is a necessary aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have some comments later about how that could have been integrated without ruining the fairy tale, which would have made this better, but we'll get that to the end. For now, let's move to the practical questions Chris and I have about this wonderful story. So like how does this kingdom function when everyone is consumed by sex all the time? It must cost a lot of money, take considerable time to manage this whole thing. It just doesn't seem feasible. I understand that their major import is sex slaves on like a timed contract, but what is their major export? It doesn't seem to be sex slaves or anything. What is your economy? Who is managing your other affairs as a kingdom? I don't understand.
The upper crust nobility, the upper management is just doing this BDSM fuck play all the time. Mm-hmm. So who
literally constantly.
Yeah, literally all the time. There's like there must be some royal accountant somewhere who is like poring over, like, because I'm assuming this is a spank-based economy, right? Paris, like, that's the only thing that's literally propelling everything forward. So there's just some account, there's like,
if we believe in the spank-based economy,
yeah, you have to have intrinsic trust in it. Spoiler alert for the next episode over here, that we pre-recorded over here. But like, I'm assuming there's got to be some like royal spank accountant like sweating and wiping his brows, like, okay, well, there was 1,000 spanks given out the other day, but where are they coming from? No one is admitting that they did the spanking, and therefore, who is in charge of those spanks at that moment? I need to track this down.
Or what if there's some guy at a ledger being like, oh my god, we are way over the paddle budget this month. Jesus fucking Christ, somebody's gonna tell the queen. How are we gonna tell her?
Half of them are gold and shit. Like,
yeah, they're really
like a
fancy
regular
paddles.
plain paddle.
I mean, there's even a point.
Like, you gotta stop with the gilded. Just like you're running through 100 golden paddles every week. The handles are cracking off. It's a brittle material. At least use something more sturdy, please.
God, there's just so many accessories around and like implements. It's just God.
The oil budget alone, like
yeah, the oil and honey budgets, because they also put honey on your genitals to attract bugs, because they definitely don't want to hurt you or anything.
Yeah. Okay, but also there's like the portion. There was a scene where oil was applied to the pussy, and I gotta say, Paris, what do you think? What's the right oil to pair with pussy?
Well, I think the right oil is no oil, because it would upset the pH of your vagina, which is why you're not supposed to use fucking douches and stuff.
But if you had to,
I mean, I would definitely, like, no savory oils. Like, I don't think anyone wants their, like, a savory vagina. That's a little weird.
Yeah, definitely no on the chili oil, right? Like, you do not.
No, nothing hot. That would be bad.
No.
Maybe, like,
sesame, maybe a little bit.
No. Something sweet or not heavily floral.
Grapeseed.
Maybe, like, no, you know what? Like, maybe an oil that smelled like fresh cut grass. That seems pleasant.
Okay, you know. I suppose. I was going to argue, you probably do want a very neutral kind of thing, because that area is already very scented, perhaps, and like adding another element into the mix probably will just upset.
Yeah, you got to get those scent layers right. You know, what's your top note? What's your bottom note?
You don't want like that olive oil in there, and then you just have Italian pussy.
Oh, well, that's really greasy. That wouldn't be good. No. Yeah, I'm going to say it'd have to be like a jojoba or an almond oil with a light scent to it, just because, it's going to go in easily. You don't want olive oil just hanging out on your fucking skin.
Yeah.
But anyway, don't put oil on your pussy. I don't know what Anne Rice is fucking smoking here. Like, no, don't put oil on your pussy, or in your pussy, rather. Oh, man. I mean, this place is they're so into the pain element that even their blankets hurt. There's a scene where Beauty is sitting on the prince's bed, and the blanket is bejeweled, and it's so heavily bejeweled that it's like spiky, and she's like, "Ow, even the blanket hurts." And I'm like, "Oh, fuck off!" Like, this is
trying to
so
sleep here. Every time I toss and turn, I'm dragging like diamonds across my skin and like cutting it. So I wake up.
I think it's just on the top layer, but still, I mean,
I don't want any layers of any anything on any blanket that I am sleeping on.
Oh, I know. Yeah, and like this whole concept that all the other vassal kingdoms owe them sex slaves for a certain period of time. Like, all the nobility of the lesser kingdoms have to send their, I don't know how many, but 8 princes and princesses of varying number to this kingdom to be broken in, essentially, for a number of years. And I guess the lengths of the contracts all differ. There's really no reasoning given for why the fuck this kingdom has all this power. Like, what do they wield? Nuclear weapons? Like, if it's anything short of that, how has anyone let this continue?
There's got to be some, like, Maradonia-style magic nuclear wand or something that they can just point at a kingdom and say, "Goodbye, kingdom," or something, because, like, otherwise, why would you do this? There's some lines about, like, oh, well, they returned with wisdom and better for it. And I'm like, what fucking wisdom are you gaining here? Is it maybe to, like, make sure nobility aren't too haughty or something? If that's the case, is the queen and the prince, were they part of this arrangement sometime before? It doesn't seem like it. It just seems like they're at the top all the time and they never have to participate in that portion of it. Therefore, why, that kind of is very hypocritical and goes against your whole, if I'm presuming the idea here is to make it so that the nobility aren't too, haughty about their station or something like that. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine. I mean, it's so silly and absurd that I don't really know how anyone could really, I don't know. I don't understand. This place would also, like, the other thing is they never address, like, pregnancies that might result, or I don't know, the fact that this place would be probably a fucking breeding ground for the newest and constantly evolving STIs. Like, what? They don't have doctors. I mean,
they're fucking omega chlamydia over here in Paris. They got
and
power gonorrhea.
They're gonna have to call in the fucking medieval Power Rangers to deal with this shit. Like, this is a rough time.
Paris, the fucking Super Saiyan clap up in here. It's gone to Super Saiyan Rose, which is a thing in Dragon Ball Z. I don't know if you knew that, but Super Saiyan Rose is the thing. Which I found out recently.
That's the particular strain infecting this kingdom.
Oh god. Yeah, but like no protection, no like talk of birth control.
No. I mean, it's a medieval fantasy world, but even in earlier periods of history, not this is really history. This is clear, but if you're
the historical tale of Foxylvania.
I mean, anyway, there's just no care given to that. There isn't even an explanation of there's no magic in this at all.
Yeah, if it's gonna be a fairy tale, at least throw me like, and then the magic fairy hit me with the no babies wand.
Or dude, just honestly, hey, we use this elixir. It's got this plant in it. Like that stuff that used to be in Rome that we unfortunately used all of until, what was it called? Shit, I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, there used to be an herb that prevented pregnancies if you took it immediately. If you ingested it immediately before sex. It was used in ancient times, but has unfortunately been eradicated. Like, they could, that's something you could have just incorporated into the story, and it would have at least explained that away. And the idea, Anne Rice's idea that no one gets hurt and that there are no injuries in this, I think it's just a lie. I mean, I think to her, maybe, like I said, she's become so desensitized that she doesn't understand that if you're, excuse my language, but if you are raping orifices
yes,
without lubrication all the time, that's going to create some injuries. So I don't know what this whole no one's getting injured thing. And also when you're stringing people up, literally, stringing them up as though they were not quite crucified, but sort of with all their limbs tied up outside in the elements or on a bedpost for an entire days, I mean, that will actually produce injuries. I don't really understand this whole, no one's getting hurt.
Here's a relatively mild example of that. And on the landing was a stone statue that frightened Beauty. It was a pagan god of some sort with an erect phallus. It was onto this phallus that Prince Alexei was now thrust, his legs bound apart on the pedestal of the statue. His head was laid back on the statue's shoulder. He gave another moan as the phallus impaled him, and then he lay still as Squire Felix bound his hands behind his back. The statue's right arm was upraised, the stone fingers of the hand forming a circle as if they had once clasped a knife or some other instrument. And now the squire carefully positioned Prince Alexei's head on the shoulder of the statue beneath that hand, and through the clasped hand, he placed a leather phallus, anchoring it so that it fit into Prince Alexei's mouth. It seems now that the statue raped him both through his anus and through his mouth, and he was bound to it, and his organ, as stiff as before, lay thrust forward as the phallus of the statue was inside of him. Now you are perhaps a little more used to your Prince Alexei, said the prince softly. But this is too terrible, Beauty thought, that he must spend the night in this misery. Prince Alexei's back was painfully arched, his legs bound wide apart, and the moonlight from the window behind him made a long line down his throat, his smooth chest, and his flat belly. I guess her logic is like that, skin isn't being broken and there's no like permanent injury.
Skin is being broken, and there could be permanent injury based on the things read about in this book. So I disagree with that, and I think that she could have just said something like, "There's no gore and disfigurement. It's not that type of thing." And I would have said, "Okay, fine." But to really say like no one's getting hurt is fucking too cutesy for what's really happening here. I'm sorry. Like it's just absurd to say that.
Yes.
So that was.
They talk about like the huge welts from the spanking, and welts go away over time, but there's like a lot of them, and it's happening all the time. That can't be great for skin in the long term.
Well, skin and also the things beneath your skin, like like your organs.
Yes. Yes.
They have the and Chris, you pointed out in your notes that the every slave has their own groom, which, they're not really a doctor. They're more of a masseuse and kind of a helper to bathe them and, rub their welts with like lotion. But there's no real medical treatment here. So I feel like if you're going to go to the lengths of having the grooms, could they at least be doctors, or magicians or something?
Yeah.
I don't know. It just would have helped. Because we have people who are literally forced to have sex all of the fucking time. Like, men have to constantly have erect penises. Women have to constantly...
That is the most baffling shit to me in the world. It's like 24/7 boner. I can't do that, dude.
Well, I just don't even think the human body could actually do that without severely developing injuries, right? Because you're pushing all kinds of blood to that one
There's
place.
a fucking warning on Viagra. It's like, if you have a boner for more than 4 hours, go to the doctor, please. Like, that's an issue.
I just don't think it would be physically possible for that reason. And it's not like there are any implements to help this out. They're just
like a cock ring or something, right?
No,
like, minimally.
I think there's mention of one time, but that's not the case for everyone. They're just whipped and beaten until their dicks are hard forever, which I just don't think is a thing that could ever happen.
I mean, yeah, like the blood is going to rush to the point of injury to try to help, heal it a little bit. So it's a little bit of splitting of resources there.
Just the fantasy is taken to new heights where we don't care about biology or, obviously
or even
we don't.
Hygiene, because if everyone's naked all the time, Paris, there's fluids or everyone. There's got to be just like a little bit of piss all over everything, right?
Oh,
because
dude, what about the janitors in this fucking kingdom? Like, oh man, I guess job security in this world, but
right. But there's got to be just a little bit of pee. And I know everyone's going to email me or in the YouTube comments be like, well, there's technically a little bit of pee all over everything all the time. Yes, I understand, but there's a little bit more pee in this kingdom.
Yeah, we don't get any no water sports or anything going on, at least, but yeah, I imagine.
Yeah, there's a weird part where it's like, well, at least we have the privacy when we do our business. And I'm like, why would they draw the line there if everything else
doesn't make any sense either?
If you're going for humiliation, it's weird that you draw the line there in this humiliation kingdom.
Yeah, wouldn't you think that they'd be like, haha, you have to pee in her mouth and you have to shit on her face. I feel like that fits right in with all of this, but Anne Rice is not into it, so she just conveniently wrote it out. No, they're nice about that, though. No, they're nice about that. Oh, the one thing they're nice about. Okay.
Yeah, you're permanently my slave and you have to do whatever I say and do all this humiliating shit. But, I won't make you take a shit in front of me.
It's really silly. Yeah, I don't know. Chris, you made a great point in the notes about, so is it actually better to not be in the nobility so you're not in the sex slave lottery? I was like,
right?
Yeah.
Technically, I would rather be the person that has no chance of whatsoever being picked for this. And so I guess that's the major advantage. Right? Maybe that. I feel like that is kind of the point of this whole system, because it's never explained why this system is in place or how it came to be, or even what the true details of the system are besides, hey, you got to come and be a fuck toy for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. Having a hard time with this spank-based economy and this weird fucking sex slave trade here.
Paris, I could get down with like BDSM slut kingdom where everyone's fucking all the time. It's a big fantasy. If everyone was happy and smiling and into it the whole time, I'm gonna say again, like I said at the top of the episode, it's the constant tears that are a major turnoff for me.
Yep.
I gotta, like you said, probably doesn't surprise anyone here, but I am a pornography consumer, right? Like this is a thing that I look at. And what I don't like is when people seem to be distressed or exploited or taken advantage of. A major thing that I'm looking for is happiness and smiling and consent and being clearly into the whole thing, which is strugglingly very hard to find, actually, which is disturbing to me.
Yeah,
but,
which is why I think that stuff like this is a problem in our greater
that's
culture.
Functionally the issue that I have with it, too. Like, I really need you to... I need you to be communicating to me that you're very into what is happening here. I need that to be happening.
Yeah.
So maybe you could... If you could couch this in, like, Beauty wasn't crying all the time, and she actually found that she was into it from the get-go.
Yeah, so I actually have some options that Anne Rice could have utilized to make this whole thing an easier, neater package. So for me, we could fix it pretty easily by making everyone at least an adult and finding a way to incorporate consent. So, you know, if you didn't want to write a preamble about, hey, this is a kink wank story, FYI, in the real world, the kink community utilizes consent. You could have just made everyone in their 20s or 30s or something, or 40s or 50s, or God, fucking just keep the kids out of it. Secondly, I think there were ways that you could have incorporated consent. So, I mean, you know, we could, okay. Here's some ideas about how this could have been done. Let's say Beauty has a fucking diary next to her bed. And the prince reads it when he gets in there and he's like, oh, wow, she really wanted to be, she was really, I don't know, it could have been like, I dream of a prince who will wake me with passion and take my innocence, like, and then the fucking ink trails off. Like, I don't know. I mean, you could have at least, even something as silly as that would have at least given you some idea that Beauty might have been into this. This also is one of the only scenarios where I would accept the dream clause where, and then this is what she dreamed while she was asleep under her curse. And it felt a living nightmare, but then the real prince wakes her up with, I don't know, a fucking shoulder shake, a kiss on the forehead, and some waffles. Like, at least then you're still getting the fantasy out there, but it was all a dream. I mean, it is lazy, but at this point, I'm grasping for anything that could have made this okay. It also could have been more compelling if, sure, okay, look, I'm going to say, I get that you're looking for this rape simulation here. So even if it does start that way, this could have been, I could understand how it could have been better if we focused on Beauty and the prince developing their relationship. If the prince wasn't an awful fucking person, and if we were like inside their minds while they're developing their romantic and sexual desires with one another and kind of figuring out that they like BDSM stuff together, that would have been fine. Like, I don't know why we had to do...
Like, they keep role-playing the time that he woke her up, right? Like, they keep coming back to that over time.
Yeah, or whatever.
Instead of the whole fucking castle being ensconced in all this.
Well, and the other problem I have about this whole society based around the sexual torture and enslavement, it just makes it unbelievable and laughable rather than hot. You know, and Anne Rice touts this book as being an achievement because every page is hot. You know, she's like, women used to have to read these women's romances, these bodice rippers and stuff where they had to bookmark the hot pages. And she's like, no, every page is hot. And it's like, I don't know, Anne, when they're like, and then we strung up the 10th princess and covered her genitals in honey. And then we laughed at her. And then they brought in we had a big feast underneath her honey vagina. Like, I don't know. It just seems silly. It doesn't.
Honey Nut Vagina, the new cereal for posts.
Yeah, like I don't know if we're really
Honey Bug Vagina, I suppose.
I don't know if we're hitting that point. But then again, look, I get that some people think this is wonderful. It's just not for me. Much like many of the other books we've read on this show, and I think it has some elements that are problematic when allowed to just run free in the literary and media world at large, outside of the kink community for whom this is written. I don't know. It feels irresponsible to us as outsiders, and I know others are going to feel differently, but yeah, no, just a big old not for me sticker just bloop, slapped right on top of there. Whew.
Paris, how about I close it off with a little passage from the book so people can.
Wow, Chris is brave. Chris, actually, I really appreciate you doing this because yeah. What page are you on? What page are you on?
I am on page 61 because I just let my finger fall where it may.
Oh, that's fun. All right, I just want to follow along here. All right, go ahead.
Beauty was now alone with the prince, and the prince was sitting quietly by the fire looking at her. She was in a great state of agitation. She knew she was blushing as always, and that her breasts were heaving slightly. She rushed forward quite suddenly and pressed her lips to the prince's boot, and it seemed to move as if it welcomed her kiss. Rising slightly as over and over again she kissed it. She was moaning, oh, if only he'd give her permission to speak. And when she thought of her fascination with the punished prince, she blushed all the more. That's a different prince. But her prince had risen. He took her wrist and lifted her, and drawing her hands behind her back so that he held them firmly, he spanked both her breasts hard until she cried out, feeling the heavy flesh sway and the sting of his hands on her nipples. Am I angry with you, or am I not? He asked softly. She groaned, imploring him, and he placed her over his knee, as she had seen the young prince over the page's knee, and with his bare hand he gave her a smart torrent of blows that had her crying aloud in an instant. To whom do you belong? He demanded in a low but angry voice. To you, my prince, completely, she cried out. It was dreadful. And then, suddenly unable to control herself, she said, Please, please, my prince, not in anger, no. But instantly his left hand clamped over her mouth, and she felt another terrible torrent of hot spanks until her flesh was stinging and she couldn't control her crying. She could feel the prince's fingers against her lips, but he would hardly be satisfied with this. He had her on her feet now, and by her wrist he led her to a corner of the room between the blazing fire and the curtained window. There was a high stool there made of carved wood, and on this he sat while he stood her beside him. She was crying softly, but she dared not beg again, no matter what happened. He was angry, fiercely angry, and though she could endure any pain for his pleasure, this was unbearable for her. She must please him, must make him loving again, and then any pain at all would not be too much. That's the tone for this entire book.
Yeah. I don't know. I just have such a hard time like with these ideas kind of being, in the hegemonic, worldview, in which we are steeped. I have a really hard time with it. I have a hard time with it all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. So you've made it all the way through with us patrons. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You don't have to be spanked by us anymore. This has been an audio spanking to your brain.
God. Yeah.
Although we give you permission to leave at any point.
Look, I think it's okay. Different people are into different things. Just let's all be responsible about it. We all want consent.
Yes.
Let's talk about how
Please.
good consent is. Yay.
Yes.
If you want to play at non-consent, play at it. It's not for me, but I understand as long as if there's an agreement and you're all happy about it and you're all actually enjoying yourselves, it's great. Cool. All right, folks, we're going to agree to disagree here. Right.
Okay. All right. See you later.
Yeah, I'm just going to wait for the mail bombs that are going to show up at my fucking house in a week. All right. Yeah, at this point, I think we're just going to thank the patrons.
Yeah. Thanks for sticking with us through this.
Whew, yeah, thank you, patrons. Thanks for making this review possible. Mysterious Twitter Ann, I hope you are not Anne Rice, because if you are, I'll be mad at you. But I don't know. I'm not sure what you were hoping to get out of this review. I don't know if you're a fan of the book or not. But it was, it was not for us for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't even know. I mean, we didn't even touch on everything because otherwise we'd be here all night long. We were hoping to, I was we were just really expecting something different when we picked this one up. I thought it was going to be more of our classic complaints, but this was just a whole other layer. We wanted to do something kind of spooky for October, and then
it's scary.
Yeah, and then it got too scary.
Yeah.
Now we're trapped in this castle. Oh God. Anyhow, thank you, patrons. We hope you have a lovely Halloween or Samhain or whatever you celebrate or don't celebrate. Have a nice fall. Have a nice cup of tea. Have a good coffee.
October is the best weather month.
Enjoy
it.
Enjoy. Most of all, I hope you enjoy some autumnal consent with whatever activities you engage in. All right. Thank you, patrons.
Pumpkin spice consent.
Fuck. Oh, that got me.
Consent soup.
Oh. Thank you to Dari, Greg, Veronica, Will, Dee, Jared, Lynn, Senia, Yakub, Bobby Blackcat, Lycoris, Elliot, Kieran, Martin, Jay, Scott, Luchek, CTAP1, Miri, Yanka, David, Julius, Anya, Anonymous, Patricia, Austin, Donnie, Crimson Paladin, and our first coffee, or Kofi, it's coffee, but Kofi, Ko-Fi, our first coffee donor, Lack Stoties. Plus, we'd also like to thank our patron, Anya, who actually sent us a good book to assuage our pain during a particularly tough season.
I have it.
Yeah. So each fall, we actually pre-record all of the late November through early February episodes so that we can take a break between seasons. So it's quite the crunch period, but then, we get the nice break for a couple months, which we need to restore our strength to read more bad books next year. So thanks, Anya. Anya sent us, what was the book called? Something like Monday, Monday, something. Fuck, I forget.
Yes, it's called Sunday, Monday, something. No, it was by the guy that wrote the short story that got turned into the Stalker video game series. Saturday.
I have no idea what that is. I don't know what you're talking about. Stalker, a video game? I don't know what you mean.
There's a video game called Stalker, which is basically like Fallout, but in Russia.
Oh. Okay.
Monday begins on Saturday, is what it was called.
Okay. Monday begins on Saturday. So I'm really looking forward to reading that over our break. And so thanks a lot, Anya. That was really nice of you. Anyhow, if you want to help support the show, you can subscribe or watch on YouTube. You can leave a comment, like a video. You can donate to us on Patreon for extra content, or if you just want to do a one-time donation like Laxotes there did, you can just find us on coffee, ko-fi.com/terrible book club. If you want to follow us
I will say it's a very generous Ko-fi donation too. I don't get into the specific amount, but that's a lot of coffees for us. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's public information. They can find it if they want, and that's also why we're shouting him out on the show, because it was really fucking nice, especially this time of year, especially for this fucking book. Good Lord.
Right.
Anyhow, if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads. If you're on those platforms, if you like the show, please share it on social media. Tell someone about it. That's cool. If you like the show, if you write a review, that's really helpful. If you, give us a little rating somewhere, really nice. And if you do, we'll read it on a future episode. You can contact us either through direct message on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Goodreads, or Patreon, or Coffee. Or you can send an email to terriblebookclub@gmail.com. So, like I've said, probably a fucking 30 times in this episode, I'm sure many people are going to have problems with our opinions on this book. If you want to have send us a civil message about it, you can go ahead and send it in. But if you're going to be an asshole,
problems with our opinions and reading reviews, we recently received a 1-star review.
Oh my God! Yeah, let's read the 1-star review. Oh, I love the shitty reviews.
Equal opportunity 1-star review readings here. We're not just reading the 5-star stuff here.
I don't know how old that I found that it's a Canadian review, so I had to dig to find it. We get these little sort of summaries of our activity, but they're pretty delayed. So sometimes we don't see reviews for a while, sometimes weeks or months. And once in a while, international ones will just slip through that we won't see. So I've recently found one from Canada. Chris, go ahead. What is this 1-star review?
1 star from Billy Reed's Books. Not great. If you actually want to know how good a book is, this isn't the podcast to listen to. The episodes can be entertaining at times, but the hosts clearly just want to tear books apart. They've decided the books are bad before even reading them, making an objective review impossible.
So here's the thing. We didn't decide they were bad. We thought they were with a hypothesis, and then we tested it by reading it, and then the review is the experimental results.
There's definitely been books we thought would be crap that we liked in the end.
Yeah.
We thought Bear would be terrible, but we kind of really were into Bear.
I fucking love that book. I recommend it to people all the time.
Right, like, there's plenty of other examples. Like, even Swamplandia we thought would be pretty silly, but it turned out to be pretty good.
I thought it was great. Yeah, so the idea of, like, an objective review, I don't understand what that means.
There's no such thing with media critique. It's all subjective.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, we try our best to consider other perspectives, but ultimately, Chris and I are going to have our own separate opinions. I mean, sometimes we even disagree on the show live. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't understand.
You don't go to a reviewer for like this is the true opinion about this piece of work. That's not what a reviewer is supposed to be doing. They're giving you their take on it. And if you find yourself aligning with their tastes, you will follow that reviewer as a way to get a quick and easy opinion on something and know generally, oh, I might like this, I might not. Or even maybe you might find a reviewer just because you enjoy their perspective but don't agree with them. So like a good example for me, of course, everyone knows Anthony Fantano from the Needle Drop, where he's one of the biggest music reviewers out there. I agree with him like half of the time, but I watch some of his reviews because he has a pretty decent background knowledge on a lot of these genres, and he can bring that perspective to things. So at least I get that out of it. But I'm not there because I have to agree with the melon all the time.
Yeah. I think it would be different if we reviewed things and never gave reasons as to why we feel this way. Like if we were just like, oh, fucking claiming Sleeping Beauty is terrible, don't read it. The end. And then we didn't explain why. I mean, I think we tried to explain why. I mean, we do this with each book. We try to give reasons. Like we say the writing wasn't good. We're like, well, this is why, there were spelling errors. It was hard to understand sentences. I mean, I think people just get mad because they hear us not like a book that they like, and then they can't get over how mad they are. And I think that's
and this
idea
of the objective review I will never stop tearing down, because it's just, you cannot approach art critique like that. There is not the one true opinion about any piece of work.
Well, I think the other problem, and this is a great metaphor to use on this episode, is the fucking circle jerk culture that a lot of arts people have, where like you can only say positive things. You can't critique anyone else's shit. And this happens in heavy music too. Like, God forbid you not like a new record that came out, or you don't like your friend's band or something. It's like anathema. And I assume it's the same with writing too. Like, oh no, you can't say something bad, especially if it's about a big published author like Anne Rice. How dare you not like her work? That's like, dude, there's plenty of fucking work I don't like. Just somebody's popularity does not mean that they are inherently great. Just like the popularity of any idea or concept does not mean that it inherently has value. Yes, you can talk about, okay, something is popular. Let's analyze why it's popular. Why do people like it so much? What, and does that have value to me? Like, there are just so many more levels of consideration that you have to give before you can't just make these fucking pronouncements. Like Chris is saying, like, there's no one interpretation of a fucking book. I mean, unless you're writing really flat material with no, I guess if you're like the color
no
red
subtlety whatsoever.
I don't know. The color purple is red and blue. Yeah, I don't know if you can really have a alternate critique on that statement.
I mean, as a small sidebar to this, and I know I've brought this up over time, but like, we're musicians, we get critiques about our material all the time, and you kind of have to take into account that not everyone's going to like it. I've seen people like shit on Graveborn because it's like, oh, they're calling themselves like melodic deathcore. What the fuck is that? Or like we call ourselves death metal on some albums, but like we're not death metal enough. And like that kind of squabbling about the genre, and you're immediately writing it off. I saw a bad review for the latest Graveborn album actually that said like, this is your standard deathcore trope garbage that I'm sick of. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, if that's how you feel, that is totally fine, even though I don't agree with that take. I feel like he listened to like the first 2 tracks that do have that kind of vibe and then tuned out for the rest of it, essentially. But I can't be sure about that, and his take is valid on that if he doesn't like that. Also, I was recently like watching a stream of like this, just YouTuber just like critiquing songs, and like I submitted mine and he did it live in front of me. And he liked most of it except for like one measure in my solo where he was like, that was a fucking horrible shit take on that solo, like on that one line. Why didn't you just redo it? Why didn't you just redo it? This is fucking terrible. Everything about this song is great except for that 1 second right there. You should have redone it. And honestly, he's fucking right, because every time I listen to that solo, I listen to that 1 section, I was like, I should have fucking redone that. I should have like the one part that's like a blemish on it.
Dude, that's one of those things where I always think that too. Like I also have the tendency to be like, oh, I've done this take 25 times, whatever, it's good enough. And it's like, but if you can do it again, you probably should.
And yeah, so like that was completely, like he was completely right about that. And now, even though that album was overall better on the amount of takes that I was doing, at a certain point you just kind of get burnt out during the day. But like that's no excuse. You should have come back and redone that 1 fucking second. I should have done that.
Yeah, and I mean, plenty of people don't like my band either. And for many of them, the problem is that I am a woman singing in a band, and they don't like the timbre of a female voice. And honestly, like I've had that problem myself with some other bands, depending on exactly what the voice sounds like, of course. And when people have said that respectfully to me, I've just been like, cool. I'd honestly rather hear you respectfully tell me like, oh, it's just not my flavor. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. Thanks. Thanks for trying it. I've had people, say worse things too, and that's just going to happen. So anyway, yeah.
Take it all on the nose and like just don't get so fucking uppity about it. I was like a little upset for like a half an hour after that because I was like, shit, I fucking should have done that. God damn it.
But you weren't upset at him. You were upset at yourself, right? There's a difference.
Yeah,
there.
no, like he was absolutely has a right to think. And I wasn't even upset at that one guy who wrote the shitty review of the album and said like, this is fucking trash.
Yeah.
Because.
And I'm not upset at people that write 1-star reviews. Like, I mean, people are going to do it. That's unfortunate. Reviews are much like the rest of the internet, where people are only going to take the time if they really love something or really hated it, right? So, it's going to happen.
That's why we encourage our listeners to please send us any material, any commentary that you might have, because any little bit helps, and we like to hear from you and not just feel like we're screaming out into the void here.
Yeah, and as long as you're not being an asshole about it, that please don't be an asshole.
And this guy wasn't an asshole.
No,
right?
no,
so,
he wasn't. He wasn't.
He's totally. I mean, mostly valid perspective, except for the bit about objective reviews and us just deciding that we don't like a book from the outset.
Yeah, I think a lot of people really miss. I think. And my guess here is that there might be some skipping through, right? So they're missing the beginning portion where we explain the show and talk about like why we do this and whatever. But anyway, sorry, we've been going on for a bit. We're actually making really great time tonight, so this is good. We did 2 episodes tonight, so we are very happy to be done soon.
All right. Well, I mean, send in your reviews. We'll read it regardless of whether you liked us or not. Yeah. All right. Well, go out there and please, gain consent for whatever activity you're doing with another person.
The whole end of this episode is going to be us yelling, consent, consent. No sex with teenagers, please.
We hope you consent to listening to us next time on Terrible Book Club.
Yeah. Anyway, have a lovely autumn ween, folks, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Oh, that's a phrase, Paris.
What?
I bet you're having some lovely autumn ween lately.
No, like fall and Halloween.
Yeah, Paris, I know, but I'm also making the joke about ween being dick.
Oh, Jesus, I didn't even. Sorry, I've become so desensitized thanks to Anne Rice's
all the humiliation and torture has gone over your head.
Yeah, no, whatever. I'm going to be eating my cereal upside down with honey on my vagina now. That's just normal to me.
Great, cool.
Everything's cool.
Awesome. All right, see you later, everyone. Bye.
recording.
As am I. Are you ready to spank sink, Paris?
Yeah, I guess so.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That was incredible. Oh, wow.
Wow, those are bigger spikes than normal too.
Yeah, we're spanked in.